And this is
Flumadiddle.
your somewhat reliable source of information for
Most things, John.
most things, Keith, including but not limited to
The very important COVID-19
vaccine. Keith,
And we're going to talk to you about lots of things, kind of a little bit of history of how we come up with the COVID-19 vaccine, but also we'll hit some of the myths and facts and stuff with that. But so let's dive into it, John.
all right, Keith. So let's think about this past year. It's been a tough year for everyone.
Everybody.
We creep around into January of 2020. There's rumblings of some kind of virus going on in China.
Yeah.
And then as we move on into February and March, we're hearing stories of things and how they're going in Italy. And things kind of getting real. The next thing you know, we're wearing masks. We're running out of toilet paper. We can't go out to restaurants. We're not supposed to go anywhere or do anything. There is a pandemic.
And that goes on, and it goes on and on and on. We just can't live normal lives, John.
Can't do it.
But luckily, John,
Thankfully,
decades, people had actually been working on something that was going to save the day, right?
Exactly.
Starting back in 1961. I mean, John, this is back when Kennedy was president. Bay of Pigs. Cold War. Which we talk about in another video you need to check out.
Yes, and also we're going to be hitting some kind of space race type stuff here. Maybe by the time this is out.
Absolutely.
Who knows?
Space race was going on.
Space race.
And also, there was something else that happened, John.
mRNA, messenger RNA, was discovered. Ribonucleic acid.
Absolutely. And it wasn't a big deal for a little while, but this lady in the 90s, her name was Catalin Curico, she said, hey, I think I can harness the power of this mRNA. And so she set out to do so.
Visionary woman.
Yes, she was. Right here in March, the
Women's
History Month. Yeah.
So shout out to Catalin Curico. Is she still living?
Catalin Curico. I'm not sure. I think so. Maybe I didn't really check that out. But anyway,
check her out and tell us about it.
Let us know if she's
comments.
still alive. Yeah, and if she is, maybe we can interview her or something. But that'd be awesome.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, so she thought that, hey, I can harness the power of this mRNA, and she set out to do so. She based her whole career on it, right? And throughout the 90s, she worked on it. And this was so out there, she couldn't get funding. Her colleagues didn't really believe that she could do it. You know, she couldn't get the support from her colleagues.
But was it mRNA vaccine specifically that she was visually looking towards? Or just...
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. I mean, she was trying to see if she could she could hack it and use the mRNA to get cells to do things.
Okay, so we're headed in that direction.
Headed in that direction, yeah.
All right, so let's take a little break right there, Keith. Let's talk about what a vaccine is.
Okay.
You know, all of us had vaccines, and if you have children like us, you had to have certain vaccines before you can even enter a public school.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And thank God for vaccines that have combated things like polio and smallpox and
Yes.
so many other what we consider the childhood diseases.
If you can tell, me and John are not anti-vaxxers.
Right, exactly. Exactly. So let's look back. So our modern vaccine kind of situation begins a couple hundred years ago. There's this cat over in England, right, and they've got this smallpox thing. It's pretty bad. So this guy, Edward Jennings, I believe it was, decides he's going to inject this
Jennings
kid.
or Jenner?
Was it Jenner?
Yeah, because we said it was Bruce's brother.
Yeah, well, let's go with him then. So anyway, I don't have my notes before me, and I thought I had to memorize,
That's
Keith.
all right,
but
man. You're good.
So he injected a little bit of this cow pus that had this virus in it into this kid. Isn't that disgusting?
Cow pus.
Cow pus.
I would
I
never
wonder
think
if
of
it
doing
came
something
out
like
of
that.
their milky teats.
I don't
So
want
anyway,
no cow pus.
I don't either.
Cow milk. That's disgusting.
But basically, that whole line led up to where we are prior to the mRNA vaccines, Keith, where we either used a live attenuated virus, meaning just a little small bit of a live virus, right, or a dead virus to help our body create antibodies. Because that's what a vaccine is. It's an introduction of this foreign substance, this attenuated virus or dead virus, to help our bodies, our immune systems, to provoke a response to something. So if the smallpox comes near us, guess what? It can take care of it, Keith.
So you called it modern vaccines. Really, mRNA would be modern, right? That's like the steam engine of vaccines.
But I just mean compared to a couple of years ago.
I know what you mean. I ain't getting on you, man.
Okay.
I'm just trying to say that this mRNA is a big deal, right?
Oh, it's big, Keith. It's big.
Yeah. And so
Kinda
anyway,
seems like Flumadiddle.
cattle and Curico really never got a lot of recognition for this, right?
Or recognition, either one.
Either one. And so what happened, though, was it did get published in some papers in 2005, and there was this cat. His name was Derek Rossi.
Oh, yeah. Somebody's going to climb up on her shoulders and
Yeah,
take off, as is so
absolutely.
often the case.
And he knew that there was something to this. And then in 2007, he got his own lab at Harvard, you know, and this cat, he's kind of a hipster-looking guy, really.
Looks like Tony Stark, man.
Yeah, I mean hipster in a good way, like Tony Stark, not like a man bun, got my cat on a leash, you know.
Cat on the leash, kid.
Yeah, snowflake kind of way. Yeah. So, but anyway, he's a molecular biologist. He gets his own lab, become an assistant professor at Harvard, and he decides to start the research on this thing. Well, about a year into the research, his colleague called him over and said, "Hey, look in this microscope."
Jerry Springer, right?
Jerry Springer. Yeah, no, it's Timothy Springer. Yeah,
Keith.
and I don't think that.
You.
Yeah, and so anyway, one of his colleagues called him over, and he actually created what he was trying to create. And really, what Rossi was trying to create was he wanted to use it to make adult cells act like stem cells, so they could do stem cell research without the moral and ethical
without having to have the fetal stem cells and stuff like
absolutely.
that. I like that.
But when he told Timothy Springer, Jerry's brother. Timothy was kind of this, entrepreneurial type, and he knew exactly who to contact. He's like, man, we could do something with this.
Like I see possibilities.
Mm-hmm. And so he contacted old Robert Langer. Robert Langer was already a prolific inventor, John.
Okay.
And already had some inventions under his belt. He was a biochemical engineer. And,
biomedical even.
Yeah, biomedical engineer.
I almost went into biomedical engineering, Keith.
Did you?
I really looked into it. I looked at going to Tulane.
Yeah.
Good thing I didn't, because me being in New Orleans at 18 wouldn't have been a thing to go together back in the day.
And you got to do it anyway with the Flumadiddle Biomedical Engineering Lab.
Exactly. Here we are today.
So anyway, Langer, though, man, he saw the potential for these things, not just in stem cell research, but, hey, vaccines and drugs and, all kinds of things we can do with it. He went home and told his wife that night, he said, this may be the most successful company in history.
Keith, he had visions of sugar plums dancing in his head already.
And there wasn't even a company yet,
Right.
But he saw what it could be. And so he took it to a venture capitalist cat that he knew, and they started what is now known as Moderna.
Now, we will say this.
Is it Moderna or Moderna?
Moderna.
I like Moderna.
Down here, we're Moderna. Moderna. So,
and it was started in 2010.
2010. Let's say this. We're not advocating for any particular vaccine over the other. We just thought from our perspective that this Moderna story, as it interweaves with mRNA vaccines, was just our way to go about sharing this
kind of the
information
underdog story,
Kind of the underdog. Kind of like the Gonzaga of that. We're right in the middle of March Madness. Like, Keith, 25 years ago, who'd heard of Gonzaga?
I know, right?
It was some little Catholic school somewhere nobody had ever heard of. And now they're like, they've been the number one team in the nation. They're 26-0. They've been around.
Underdog story too.
Now they're the big dog.
They are, yeah, absolutely. So anyway, Moderna becomes public 2018, 2019 rolls around. At the end of 2019, we start hearing things afoot in China, right? Wuhan, China.
All right, let's dive in the whole mRNA science stuff. We skimmed over that a little bit, but here's what's happening, Keith. There's this Vira. Did I say Vira?
Elvira.
There's this virus that we now call the novel coronavirus.
I used to love to watch Elvira when I was 13 years old.
Elvira. Let's get back on topic here, Keith.
Right.
So, here's the thing. Because of those little crown-like projections, that's what I was looking for. Spike proteins. Right. That's where we get that corona from. The crown-like projections.
Right.
All right, so here's what's really cool and deadly and perverse and sneaky about that dirty piece of crap, the coronavirus, Keith. Within itself, it holds a single strand of this mRNA.
Yeah.
It has the directions for all of those proteins for that virus to be built.
Yeah.
It sneaks into your body. It gives your very own cells this little strand of mRNA, and your very own cell turncoats against you.
Yeah.
And builds this virus, builds these proteins. This virus replicates using your own body to build it.
Yeah.
And then it goes to the next cell. wild stuff, Keith. So now we have flipped the script. And Moderna's been working on this,
The tables have turned.
The tables have turned because this is what happens, right? You've got that little bit of mRNA in your vaccine encased in that little nanolipid.
Yeah.
Which is a little fat blob that's so minuscule you can't see it. And so when that's injected in, it tells your cell to create one of these little spike-like proteins.
Right.
Kind of as a sparring partner.
Yeah.
For your own body to make these antibodies and to be aware that, hey, this thing may be coming to get you, and I want y'all to be prepared.
Yeah.
So it does the same thing, but we're now using the power of our own body to build its own defenses instead of working for the coronavirus.
So we kind of hacked it, right?
Yeah, man.
It's awesome.
That's neat stuff, kid.
It is. And
so that's a very simplistic look at it, but that's what happens, and that's why people are that we're excited about this, man. Go ahead, pick back up where you started.
No, that's okay. I mean, this is a little bit more shorter form than the podcast. If you want the more detailed stuff, go to the podcast. We got a lot of details in there. But let's just say this: some of the myths are that this thing came out so fast. But what we're trying to tell you is Moderna was already working on this. When they heard about the COVID-19 in China, they actually were scheduled for just a few days later to make a press release that they were about to crack down in 2020 on these kind of vaccines.
And that was prior to us even knowing about
the
COVID-19. They were already working on mRNA-based vaccines for corona-type viruses.
Corona-type viruses, absolutely.
So, I mean, the timing could not have been more perfect.
Yeah, and people may ask, where's God in this pandemic? There you go. We already had almost finished the research for doing this vaccine by the time
right at the time we need
hit.
a vaccine. And that's the difficulty about the old attenuated viruses or dead virus platform. And there are times though when those kind of things are better. I did read some articles that talked about the different kinds of vaccines and why they might work better in a specific situation. But for this, the fact that they were able, Keith, as you talked about that timeline, we were able to do testing, production, and a lot of these things concurrently,
right?
As opposed to in a linear fashion.
Yeah,
like we do all these tests. Then after we go through all these hoops with the FDA, then we can get the thumbs up, and now we can start producing this stuff. Well, Moderna bet it all on the house, man.
They did. It's a big financial risk to do something like this. Like normally you might do the animal studies and then get the data and then start producing the human vaccine. Well, what they would do is start the animal studies, start producing the human vaccine simultaneously.
Right.
Now, they wouldn't give it to humans till they got the animal data,
right.
But it's a huge financial risk to go ahead and start producing it. You're talking about billions of dollars spent to produce this thing, right?
Right.
And so it's a huge financial risk to do that. But it paid off, and they were right in their research, and it works. And me and John have been vaccinated now for a couple months. We haven't grown no extra arms or legs.
We're able to be like this together, And Keith, we talked about
and that's the idea, right, John?
Is to get back to a sense of normalcy. And we talk about that in the podcast. In the field we work in medicine, we've seen so many families, specifically elderly people, disconnected from their families, usually in a skilled nursing type setting, a long-term care facility. And to see the heartbreak of those families not be able to go see their loved one or go see their grandma or their mom or their great-grandmother, not being able to hold hands with them or hug them or just show that affection and love they have for them.
Right.
And that's the kind of stuff we're moving towards. Right. And Keith and I getting back in here and cutting up. You notice last year we didn't put out a lot of content.
I think we put out one episode early in 2020, and then
we did put some stuff in September. I think we put out a couple things.
Yeah.
But bottom line is to get together and to be able to be like this, and it was tough.
Yeah, absolutely. So we encourage you to get the vaccine. It cannot change your DNA. The DNA is inside the nucleus of the cell. Right. This does not go inside the cell.
It does not.
And like we said, it wasn't done as quickly as people were saying because the research was already there.
There was already a lot of groundwork laid.
There was already moving, break out with this.
And the timing of...
It's just God's timing, right?
There Absolutely. You go.
But if you want to learn more about the vaccine and COVID-19, we dive a lot deeper into all this and the story and the narrative of Moderna in the podcast episode that is coming out.
A neat part of it I like, Keith, I won't dive in too far, but when the little hints of Wuhan and this virus and what's going on, one of the Moderna guys heard this And he immediately, the next day, we won't go too deep in this, started Googling flights out of Wuhan.
Yeah.
And where a lot of people at this time are thinking, it's no big deal. China's like, this is no big deal. It's no bigger than the bird flu.
Yeah.
It's nothing. This guy was already having visions of this thing spreading out across the world with these flights. And he told them the next day, we have got to get on this.
Yeah, see, they were actually already had the data from the Chinese scientists, or was supposed to get it anyway, so they could use it for their experiments that they were already working on. But he called them and said, hey, we got to do it for real now. Not just experiments. We got to start working on this for real, because it really scared him to the core what he was seeing. And just imagine that, the bet that they took on that, even the boardroom the next day. This is January 10th.
Right.
You know? And
I
know I was denying it. You know, we talked about that in the podcast. You know, I was optimistically denying it all the way probably through March. You know, I'm like, oh no, this is going to go away.
It's going to be okay. It's not that.
But I mean, so they had to take this billions of dollars bet
of risk.
Yeah, risk on, hey, should we go forward with this? And they all agreed. They said, hey, we have the capabilities, therefore we have the responsibility. And so they took the risk and they went forward with it, and it paid off, John. It paid off, and I'm thankful for them, man.
I am too. And again, whatever vaccine you have access to, get that vaccine.
Yeah,
whether it's Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson. There are others in the works. Also, check out the podcast.
But I do recommend the mRNA one though, versus the old school one, just because it's 95% effective.
95% effective, Keith. Mm-hmm. That's awesome stuff. People have some side effects. I didn't have too many on the second one myself.
I was achy for a couple of days. That just means it's working, guys.
That just means your particular immune system is jumping on this thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Keith, another thing. End of the day, all of this is about coming back together, connecting, reconnecting with those we love. So do your part. Be blessed. We love you.
All right, and consider checking us out on Patreon and maybe giving us a little financial support. We do this for you guys, not for advertisers, and we want to continue to create content with you in mind, not advertisers. So if you would just consider going on there and maybe giving us a little support.
Well said, Keith. Be well.
God bless.